Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video on the Gooners and Gloves Podcast channel. In today's video, it's going to be the 87th Gooners and Gloves Podcast, and I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts and predictions for the Jake Paul vs Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fight. This is taking place tonight, Saturday, June 28th. Now, obviously, I just want to preface that this is a bit different. I wouldn't normally do this. This is the first time that I'm covering an influencer boxing fight, so I want to be clear. I don't want you guys to take this video or the short that I'm going to upload too seriously. End of the day, it's just a bit of fun. It's just me trying something a bit different. Obviously, it's a big fight, and regardless of how people feel about it, there's no denying there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on it. It's a big fight, so I thought I'd go on and weigh in on it as well, give my thoughts on it. But I want to be clear, I don't want you guys to take this podcast or video too seriously. End of the day, it's just a bit of fun. I'm trying something a bit different, and this won't be too regular on the channel. I won't be doing influencer boxing fights too regularly, but I just thought I'd go on and try something different. It's obviously a big fight, and it's going to draw quite an audience, so I thought I'd go on and give my thoughts on it as well. So yeah, Jake Paul takes on Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And yeah, pretty much I'm just going to go on and get straight into the prediction. Now, I don't feel amazing predicting this, and I really hope I'm wrong. Don't get me wrong. Like, I want to be clear, I'm not rooting for Jake Paul. I don't want Jake Paul to win. Obviously, like, ultimately, I'm always going to root for the actual boxer. And of course, you know, I'm not going to act like I'm a big fan of Jake Paul or not, because I'm obviously not. But end of the day, I want to be real with my prediction. I don't want to lie and, you know, say predictions that I don't think are true just for the sake of it. End of the day, while it may not be what I want to happen, it's what I think will happen. And truth be told, I just can't see Julio Cesar Chavez getting any sort of a result here. I just can't. I hope I'm wrong, and I want to be wrong. And of course, I'd absolutely love if Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. can pull off an upset. But truth be told, and yes, by the way, the odds makers do consider it an upset. Just saying, ultimately speaking, they do consider it an upset. But yeah, I'd absolutely love for that to happen. But truth be told, I just can't see it. I just really can't see Julio Cesar Chavez getting anything here, and I'll get into why in a little bit. But my prediction is Jake Paul by knockout / technical knockout by stoppage. I think it will end within the distance. It's a 10-round fight, and I do think Jake Paul will be able to get the stoppage. First of all, the obvious thing to talk about is the insane weight difference. Obviously, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. has always consistently fought sort of between like middleweight / super middleweight, that sort of range, maybe occasionally at light heavyweight, but nowhere near cruiserweight. Obviously, cruiserweight is, you know, very heavy. It's almost 200 pounds. I think 200 pounds is the limit for cruiserweight, and that's just an insane amount of weight for Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. to have to gain to make cruiserweight. We even saw at the weigh-in, Jake Paul looked really big, and obviously we know that Jake Paul is a really big cruiserweight, and in fact, Jake Paul has to actually cut weight to get to cruiserweight. So Jake Paul, I'd estimate, probably walks around like 210, 220 in pounds this is, so about 210, 220 pounds. The cruiserweight limit is around 200 pounds, so he's probably cutting 10 to 20 pounds. So just imagine all the rehydration he's going to be able to do ahead of the fight. You know, imagine all the rehydration he's going to be able to do overnight. Meanwhile, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. has obviously had to bulk up to get to cruiserweight, and so as a result, he's not going to be able to rehydrate himself. So on Fight Night, we could very well be looking at about like a 10 to 20 pound weight discrepancy, which of course is a huge advantage to Jake. It's something that we know consistently Jake Paul has always had with his opponents. Consistently, Jake Paul's opponents have had to bulk up to get to cruiserweight, so therefore the opponents are kind of capped at around the 200 pound mark, which is the cruiserweight limit. Meanwhile, Jake Paul is, you know, easily going up to 210, 220, maybe even 225. Like, he's packing on loads of weight, and I think that's probably going to be one of the biggest reasons why Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., in my opinion, will find it difficult, because Jake Paul is just going to have such a massive weight advantage. We've seen it loads of times. Jake Paul's had a weight advantage against many of his opponents, and it's going to be no different against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. So that's the first key reason I think Jake Paul will likely get the stoppage. I just think the weight difference is absolutely crazy. So I want to be clear, I'm not saying it'd be like necessarily embarrassing if, you know, if Jake Paul outpowers Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., because you'd really expect him to, given the massive weight discrepancy here. You know, Jake Paul could easily have a 10 to 20 pound weight advantage on Fight Night because of the rehydration and everything. So that's the first key thing to talk about, is obviously the fact that Jake Paul is going to be massive on Fight Night. Obviously, we know that Jake Paul is really big at cruiserweight. He naturally walks around about 210, 220. Even when he went up to heavyweight, he didn't particularly look small there, but at cruiserweight, he just looks massive. He's a massive cruiserweight. Meanwhile, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., as expected, does not look very big at cruiserweight. As we know, he's more of a natural, like, super middleweight / middleweight, and obviously going up to cruiserweight is a very big jump. So that's the other thing to talk about, obviously, is the fact that this fight is being contested at cruiserweight, and that's certainly going to be a big detriment for Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. The second obvious thing to talk about is the fact that Jake Paul is 11 years younger. Now, I'm not saying at 39 you can't box, and we've even seen it, even with Anderson Silva, for example, we saw it, but the truth of it is, we have to be honest with it, Jake Paul is obviously going to be faster, more athletic, because he is 11 years younger. Jake Paul, I think, is only like 27 or 28 years old, so obviously still very much in in his athletic peak, his athletic prime. Meanwhile, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is obviously 39 years old, nearing 40, so obviously he's not going to be as fast or as explosive. So that's another thing that I think will give Jake Paul the advantage in this fight. It's just the fact that he's way younger, obviously going to be faster, going to be more powerful. Don't get me wrong, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is far more experienced and may be able to use the wisdom and experience he's gained to be able to navigate the fight, but I just think because Jake Paul obviously has such a big weight advantage and, you know, massive weight discrepancy, on top of the fact that he's obviously a lot younger and a lot more not more experienced, but just a lot younger, more athletic, etc. I just think he's going to be able to overwhelm Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and get him out of there. Obviously, it's going to be a shame because, as I said before, I think Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is going to have such a weight discrepancy in this fight, so for that reason, I do think that Jake Paul will likely be able to kind of just, you know, almost like bully him in a way, because obviously Jake Paul's going to have the size, he's going to be able to cut the ring off, and you know, it's a shame that this is how it goes, but at the end of the day, this is boxing, money talks. Obviously, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is being paid a lot for this fight, as I'd imagine. You know, people who fight Jake Paul, they do get paid a lot, and as a result of that, they have no problem, you know, dealing with this weight discrepancy. And, you know, as much as it, you know, it sucks to see, at the end of the day, there's no doubt he's going to get a massive payday for this, and obviously, it's going to draw a large audience. You know, one thing about Jake Paul is, regardless of how we feel about him in terms of boxing, you know, the fact is, he does bring a lot of eyes to the sport. That's something that nobody can deny. He does sell a lot of pay-per-views, he does draw a lot, and ultimately he is a big draw in boxing. That's something we can't deny. In fact, I think this fight is the biggest ever pay-per-view gate at the Honda Center, I think that's what it's called, the Honda Center, and I think this is the biggest ever gate that I've had over there. So it just goes to show Jake Paul does sell tickets. He does, you know, ultimately, like, there is a certain attraction that boxers have to fighting him because, you know, they'll get paid a lot, there's a very large audience, but of course the big risk is if they are smaller and end up getting knocked out, then of course they get memed, which, you know, ultimately is the risk that they all take. But all in all, should be interesting to see what happens. Don't get me wrong, I'd absolutely love Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. to prove me wrong and pull off an upset, and of course I'm rooting for him, absolutely. Like, I want Chavez Jr. to win, of course. Like, I'll always root for the boxer and not the influencer, absolutely. Like, I'll always root for the boxer. So hopefully Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. can pull something off, but I have to be real with you guys, I don't think so. I just can't see it. I think the massive weight discrepancy, plus the fact that Jake Paul's younger, more athletic, etc., I just think that I can't see Julio Cesar Chavez being able to do something. I just think he'll get overwhelmed and Jake Paul will eventually get the stoppage. But we'll see what happens. It certainly should be a very interesting fight. I think it'll be intriguing, and ultimately it's one that will draw a lot of eyes, it will draw a lot of attention, and I just thought I'd go on and weigh in and give my thoughts on it. So I don't want to ramble on too much. There's not really too much like boxing analysis I can do on this, to be honest. There just isn't. Obviously, Jake Paul, we know, is very much only been boxing for a few years and is obviously only on his 13th fight, whereas of course Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is a seasoned veteran, however has been quite inactive in the last few years, has obviously been a bit up and down, and there's just not really much boxing like analysis I can do for this fight, to be honest, but I just thought I'd go on and give my thoughts on it. So all in all, I think Jake Paul will get the knockout or the technical knockout between probably, like, I'll say maybe in like the mid stages of the fight. I'd estimate, yeah, I'll go with the mid stages, somewhere around then, maybe the mid to late stages. But all in all, we'll see what happens, but, you know, I want an upset. I'd absolutely love to see an upset, and I'd love to see Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. prove me wrong and get the victory, but I just don't know if I see it. I think with the massive size advantage that Jake Paul's going to have, plus the fact that obviously he's younger, more athletic, etc., I just can't see Julio Cesar Chavez really doing anything. The only way that I could see Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. getting a result is if he uses his counter-punching, his timing, because I think timing is going to be crucial for him. Obviously, we expect that Jake Paul will likely be faster because he's only 27 years old, or 28, however old he is. But that being said, if Julio Cesar Chavez can use the experience that he's gained from his many fights, of course he has had 61 fights, so if he can use his experience to get a result, then you never know, you know, maybe he'll be able to use his counter-punching, tire Jake Paul out, and eventually beat him, who knows, but truth be told, I just don't know if I see it. But anyway, I feel like I've repeated myself, so all in all, that's my prediction. I think Jake Paul will win by knockout or technical knockout. You know, it pains me to say, I don't like predicting this, but ultimately, I want to be real with you guys. I don't want to, you know, make up a prediction or say that I actually think Chavez Jr. will win just because I want it. Don't get me wrong, I'm rooting for Chavez Jr. I want him to win, absolutely. Like, this isn't me saying I want Jake Paul to win or that I'm rooting for him, but I just want to be real with my prediction, and I just think, given what we've been presented with, I just think Jake Paul will get the victory, likely by stoppage. So that's my final prediction. So yeah, pretty much, please let me know down below what you think of this fight, and just in general, what do you guys think of Jake Paul in boxing? I'd love to hear your guys' opinions. Do you think, you know, he's good for the sport because he brings a lot of eyes to it, or do you think, you know, or do you not like him in the sport because you feel he takes away away a lot of good opportunities from fighters? Or maybe do you like the fact that he gives fighters a massive opportunity to get a payday? Honestly, genuine question. Let me know what you think of Jake Paul in boxing. I think it's an interesting topic, what you personally think. For me personally, I think, he does bring a lot of eyes to the sport. That's something I have to be honest with. But at the same time, given, his lack of experience and the fact he's only fought for a few years, and of course it's never nice to see him get these, absolutely massive opportunities and headlining over world champions and all that, like he's done several times by now, because ultimately those world champions have been in boxing way longer, have worked way harder, and have ultimately had way more fights. But from the perspective of bringing eyes to the sport, there's no denying that Jake Paul does bring a lot of eyes to the sport. He does bring a lot of attention to it, so he definitely gets a lot more people watching it. But that being said, it does, we do have to be honest, like he does get opportunities over fighters that definitely deserve them more. You have fighters who have worked their entire lives, have given blood, sweat and tears, have had many fights and deserve those massive opportunities. And obviously I'm not saying Jake Paul's like not worked hard at all, because he clearly has. Like he does work hard. He that's something we can't deny. He trains hard, he works hard, he always shows up in shape, but ultimately has only been boxing for a few years professionally, whereas obviously there's fighters which have been going for decades, and unfortunately have just never gotten these sorts of opportunities. But anyway, please let me know down below, who do you think will win? Do you think Chavez Jr. can get an upset, or do you agree with me, and do you feel that Jake Paul will get the victory? And also please let me know what you think of Jake Paul in boxing. I think it's an interesting topic, and I just kind of want to start a conversation in the comment section and see what you guys think of Jake Paul in boxing. But anyway, that's going to go on and do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a great day, and I'll catch you guys at another podcast soon. Bye bye.